even if you're paying in social media, or you're paying, even when you pay, it's noisy. Everywhere is noisy. I think the best thing you can do is, I think the starting point is giving a damn about your customers.
I love that.
If you love your customer and you create something that you think will be of true value, if you communicate that and promise that without over-promising, if you stop trying to sell to the whole world, because you can't, you need to find a group of people who are going to value what it is you offer, and just speak to that group. So now you're not trying to fight the noise of everyone. You're just trying to get in front of that group and just care about what you do for those people.
From cave drawings to family histories to stories around the fire, humans crave order among chaos, connection amid isolation. So we tell stories. Our mission at the Storytellers Network is to bring the art of story to the masses. Whether you're in marketing, you're an entrepreneur, or you're developing your own personal brand, telling your story effectively can make the difference between celebrating milestones and collecting unemployment. The Storytellers Network strives to help storytellers tell their stories so you can learn from the best. Now, your host, the inbound evangelist himself, Dan Moyle.
Welcome to the Storytellers Network podcast. I am your host, Dan Moyle, and I believe in the power of story. You see, storytelling is what separates us from all other life on earth. It connects us as humans. And we're about to dive into yet another great story with a terrific storyteller. I'm excited to introduce you to this person. But before I do, a quick reminder that our website has great resources available, past episodes, contact information for me. Visit thestorytellersnetwork.com for all that. And if you're new, text the word Storytellers to 31996 to subscribe. It's easy to do. Storytellers to 31996. Now, my guest today on this episode is Nick Usborne, the conversational copywriter. See, conversational copywriting could change your business, your career, your personal brand. It is very, very powerful. Whether you own a salon or you're a dentist, how you communicate with your potential clients matters. Even if you're a freelancer, whatever it is, how you communicate is vital. Even if you're not a writer, you do need to communicate, or maybe hire a writer, right? So Nick is the voice behind the conversational copywriter, and he's ready to show his style of communicating can change businesses of every niche. And we talk about conversational writing, what it is, what it isn't, how to do it well and take your storytelling to the next level, and so much more. This is a great episode to take notes on. So you might want to get out your pen and paper, or if you're driving, do it later. Just bookmark it and come back. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to Nick's stories. So ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the conversational copywriter, Nick Usborne. Thanks for joining me today, Nick.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
I've been excited about this interview because when we first connected, back when I was at the podcast interview marketing agency, Interview Valet, I was absolutely enthralled with your manifesto. Those 15 points drilled right into my writer's soul, man. I was like this. And so this conversation, I was really excited. And I love how on your website, I'm going to read this right off the website. Have you ever read your own website and thought, that just doesn't sound like the real me? And I thought, man, that's incredible. And you say that it's a huge deal for coaches, therapists, consultants, freelancers, and other folks. And so that's where I kind of feel like the Storyteller Network listeners are. Right. They're small business people, they're coaches, they're writers, they're freelancers, they're professionals. So I'm excited to talk about that. But we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to start at the beginning for you though, Nick.
Okay.
Now, do you consider yourself a storyteller?
Formally, probably no. But when I think about it, then yes, because, I've been in marketing. This year is my 40th anniversary as a professional copywriter.
Congratulations.
So yeah, if I actually think about it, I've been telling stories for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And hopefully honest stories and true stories.
Right. Well, I think that's the key, right? Some people think, oh, you're making up stories. No, we're just
I'm not making up stories. I'm just picking the stories I want to share.
So 40 years. So is that 40 years kind of where it starts for you, or did you realize at some other point you kind of had that gift of storytelling and you wanted to use it in some way?
No, like I say, I've never. Hey, I kind of draw this distinction in my mind when it comes to story. Well, you know better than I do that there's so many people out there talking about story and storytelling and marketing, and it seems to me a lot of people are talking like about story, like with a big S. You know, it's like the big story. It's like a Hollywood story, the novel, the origin story, the hero's journey, like these big capital S stories. Whereas I think actually most of the stories in our lives, most of the stories at work in our business are kind of small S stories. They're little stories like, oh, hey, did you hear what Jack did at the company barbecue last week? That's a story, but it's not a big S story. It's just a little story. All right. It's the kind of story we all share. So I think it took me a long time to realize I was actually in the business of sharing stories, because I'd always thought of stories with that big S, you know, like my background is like at school, I studied like English literature or like classics or like, you know, the real stories. And it took, like I said, it took me a long time to realize that actually a lot of the most powerful stories in our lives are actually the much smaller stories, the stories we just use to connect with each other.
And there's certainly, I think, I mean, I'm sure you agree with this, but I'll ask this. Is there a place for the big S and the little s kind of thing?
I think so. Yeah, sure. And I think you know, there's certain brands where if a business has like a really interesting origin story, then go for it. Do the full formal sort of. And if it has like, you know, the arc of the hero's journey of a company kind of getting into a space it wasn't sure about, and things were going well and then things were going badly. I mean, if you've got a great story, then absolutely go for it. But honestly, I think most of us, we don't have that huge dramatic arc of a formal story that could be, you know, published as a story.
Right.
We work with the smaller stories. And I think smaller stories, simpler stories, everyday stories, you know, the professional kind of marketing storytellers underestimate the power of those. Because I think those are the stories that are the glue between us. Like, hey, if you and I met for the first time at some, I don't know, at a conference or something, we don't know each other. Hey, like we've met, we've done this. We said, hey, Dan, God, so it's so cool to actually sit down and talk with you. One of the ways that you and I, like all of us, we try to connect is we see if we have some common stories. Hey, do you like sports? Do you like the movies? Do you like computer games? Do you like, what do you like? Because as soon as I know what you like, then I can say, oh man, and I tell you a story.
Right.
And as soon as we share a story, we're closer now. And that's, I think, the magic of the small story. And I think that is is a conversational copywriter. That's where I see the intersection with me, is helping people with the language of simple stories that are actually super powerful when it comes to engaging with other people.
Yeah. So I want to dive into that intersection, as you called it. As I said a little bit ago, you help professionals tell better stories. Where do you start with folks in talking about conversational copywriting and just conversational story? How do you start with folks?
I guess in a sense, I try that, this is one of those questions where I can feel that I may get into a rambling mode. If I do,
That's all right.
Bring me back on course. I think all of us know how to do this. Like so, going back to that audience you talk about. So these are professionals. A lot of us are solo professionals. In our work, trust is super important. Like if you're a therapist, a counselor, a coach, a consultant, a freelancer, you're working one-on-one with clients. It's not like you're selling steak knives or lawnmowers. You're actually interacting with your customers, and trust is super important. And that building that trust has to start right at the very outset in your marketing. And that's where we get into the problem of somebody looking at their website and saying, man, it just doesn't sound, my own website just doesn't feel like me, the real me. It sounds like it was written by a marketer, or it sounds too business-like. It sounds too formal or full of business gobbledygook. It doesn't sound like the real me. And so part of what I'm teaching with conversational copywriting is let go of the kind of fancy marketing talk, let go of the fancy business talk, because in fact, your own personal persuasive voice is natural, like everyday voice, conversational voice is super persuasive. And anyone with kids has got to understand how persuasive a conversation can be. Hey, Dad, can I? Oh, Dad, please let me. All right. Yeah. We know how persuasive a conversation can be. They don't sound like marketers. They don't sound like business people. But conversation can be super positive. It's super persuasive. And we've like that kind of natural enthusiasm kids have. I mean, kids are amazing salespeople. And by the way, amazing storytellers. And it, like you say, it's all entwined, but we get that beaten out of us. Like at school, we're taught how to write in a way that helps us pass exams. And if we go to university, it gets even worse. It gets more and more formal and rigid, the kind of language we use if we want to get a master's or something. And then maybe we go to business school and we have the kind of that natural feel for natural language completely beaten out of us. And now we're just going to sound like some kind of business computing writing machine. Yeah. And right. It's like we all knew how to do it. Like as kids, we knew how to write conversationally. As kids, we knew how to tell stories, share stories. And it's like we have that spontaneity, that creativity, that natural ability to engage with others. We have it kind of educated out of us, not beaten out of us. But
in some cases.
You know what? Okay, you want a story?
Yeah,
absolutely. Why do I say beaten out of me? Because I went to I was born, raised, educated in England. So I was sent to a private school, boarding school, age 8, and which was just as ghastly and awful as you might imagine it would be. And aged 8, learning how to write English, I had a problem with punctuation. Actually, I still have a problem with punctuation, but back then I used to forget to put the period at the end of a sentence. And the teacher would come around behind and look through what I'd written. And every time I forgot to put a period at the end of the sentence, he'd take my hand and whack it knuckles first on the edge of the wooden desk.
Ouch.
So and it was never like, hey, that's a very expressive piece of writing, or that's a great piece of writing. You know, it was just, you forgot in England, let's say you forgot the full point again, whack on the edge of the desk. So yeah, I literally had love of writing or love of language beaten out of me. Now, hopefully for most people, they didn't have that physical experience, but I think it happens to all of us. And we lose the ability to write conversationally and naturally. We lose the spontaneity of that small S story. In fact, the only time we really get back into that is when we walk out of the classroom, or we walk out of the office and we go to the bar or the coffee shop and we sit down with friends and we start talking. And now if you go into a bar and you'll find all these pockets of people having conversations, step up and listen to those conversations, and you'll find a lot of the time, a big part of that conversation is the sharing of stories.
Yeah.
It's that, hey, did you hear about, oh man, you're not going to believe what I heard. Or just the sharing of stories and the bonding, or like I said, maybe it's about sports, maybe it's about where they went on vacation, stuff like that. So yeah, stories, conversation, the language is all tied together, and it's all part of, I think I'm rambling, but it's all part of that spontaneity. And when you have that spontaneity, now you have true engagement. And you have, and this awful overused word, this authenticity, is like you feel natural. So if I go to a therapist or a consultant's website, I want to honestly feel that person's voice. I want to have that first step in getting to know them. And I want to feel I can connect with this person. I feel this person is accessible. I can engage with this person. I can trust this person. Now, if that person, in fact, is just writing at me with hard charging sales copy, I'm not going to have any of those feelings. I'm actually going to feel defensive. Like, you know, if it's sign up now or blah, 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 blah. If it's the hard charging marketing, or if it's just business gobbledygook, then that creates distance as well. So that's the commonality, I think, with conversational language and stories, is they remove distance between people. They create engagement and intimacy between people.
And do you think that being conversational and authentic, like truly authentic, not the buzzword, but do you think that can also drive certain people away? And is that okay that it does? Like if my authentic self...
I was going to say is that, yes, I think it's fine that it does. And I think a kind of litmus test I have for myself, like particularly if I'm writing stuff for my conversational copywriting website or course or whatever I'm doing, is first of all, I'm writing to my audience. I'm trying to mirror the concerns, the emotions, the language of my audience. I want them to feel that I hear them, that I'm connecting with them. And then I do this slightly perverse thing in my mind, is I ask myself, am I pissing anyone off? Am I upsetting anyone? And if I think, no, I'm not going to upset anyone, it's like, what? It's like, really? You're being that careful? You're being that generic that you've created something that's not going to upset anyone? And I use that as as a check mark against any kind of work I do, because I should be excluding some people. There should be people who don't want to do it the way I'm suggesting. So yeah, it's like I'll put something out to my newsletter list, and if there's anything kind of promotional in there about, hey, don't forget there's a course here, sign up, take the course. Whenever I do that, I get unsubscribes, because people say, oh, he's trying to sell me stuff, I'm going to unsubscribe. And that used to upset me years ago. Like whenever I kind of raised my voice to say, excuse me, you might want to buy this, then people unsubscribed, and it used to upset me. Now I smile. I think, okay, that was not, it's not a good match. If they're going to want to leave just because I suggest they might want to pay for a course to learn some more, that's fine with me now.
And I think that's what a lot of us need to kind of realize, whether it's a small business or a solopreneur or whatever it is that being that authentic person, that brand may upset some people. I'm not for everyone, and that being conversational may turn some people off, and that's okay. So that's why I want to get to that. That's good. Now, when we talk about conversational, I tend to think of things like when we are talking, I can trail off at the end of a sentence and not finish it. I can use words like gonna, wanna, contractions. Is that how conversational copywriting works, or is there a different definition to it?
It's a great question, it's not a tough question, but it's a tough. You touch on a tough part. Is that conversational copywriting or conversational writing is much closer to the spoken word. So we're going to use more contractions. We're not going to freak out about the grammar. We're going to start a sentence with the word and. We're going to mess around with our verbs a bit. We're not going to mess with grammar to the degree we're making it harder for people to understand. We're just going to use the kind of grammar we use when we speak. That said, like when you transcribe, if someone transcribed this conversation, they could certainly look at my part and say, oh my goodness, he goes round and round in circles, he repeats himself, he trails off, it's a disaster, I can't print this. I'm going to have to edit it, which is why we edit transcriptions. So in a sense, it's like the spoken word, but it is tightened up a little. Or it's another way to look at it is that it's like dialogue in a book. So when you read dialogue, when you're in the story in a novel and you're reading the dialogue, or even within a movie, it feels like natural conversation. But actually, really, no one ever speaks like that. It is much more tightened up. It is much denser in meaning and nuance because it's been carefully crafted. But it certainly doesn't sound like marketing writing. It certainly doesn't sound like business writing or academic writing. It sounds like conversation, but it's actually a slightly different version of conversation. And that, I think, is a reasonable kind of analogy for what I try to do with conversational copywriting, is it feels like conversation, but it's actually much more carefully crafted than the transcription of an actual conversation.
So you could, so one of my questions was going to be, you kind of answered this. If I don't consider myself a writer, but I want to do something with the written word. Speaking into a recorder and getting it transcribed can be a starting point, but it's not the end all be all, right? You have to edit.
It can be, and I've played around with that. If I do a couple of things, like if I write something, then I'll often read it out loud to see how it sounds when it's spoken. And I've done the other way around of recording something and then transcribing it as well. And though both approaches I've found have helped to a degree, neither one quite hits the spot, I don't think. Because when we write, there's a kind of difference in structure, I think, to how we say things. Even I talk a lot with copywriters about the design, the appearance of the page. Like, say, if I'm writing, and this isn't just conversational copy, but any copy. If I'm writing an email to you, and it's a promotional email, probably my first paragraph will be one line long, one sentence, or less than the width of the column. It'll be super short. It'll just be like a 6-word. My first paragraph will be 6 or 7 or 8 words. Second paragraph, maybe 12 words in total. And what I'm doing there visually is I'm making it easy for you to ease yourself into what I'm saying. If I set it off with a 5-line paragraph, it just looks like schoolwork. It looks like hard work, and you can hear, not going to read that. So there's all these kind of technical aspects to writing for consumption on a monitor or a screen that you also have to consider, as well as the conversational thing. So if I didn't think in terms of writing structure for a screen or monitor, and I just thought of, hey, I'm going to record this and transcribe it, I could end up with it might sound conversational when I say it, but I could actually end up with something that was a 5-line opening paragraph, which when you then put it on a smartphone, you're actually scrolling just to get to the end of the first paragraph. So yes and no. I'll use the spoken word sometimes as a guide, but I'll also think in terms of the actual structure of the text on a page and how it looks and feels as people read it, and depending again as well whether they're reading it on a monitor or on a phone. And in fact, I tend to default now to the phone. Mm. I know that if it works on the phone, it'll probably work on a monitor. I don't know it's true the other way around. So I usually write now for a phone, that size of monitor.
And has technology really changed that a lot over the last, let's say, 40 years for you? Or has it always been something you have had to think about where people read it?
It's certainly in my early days. So yeah, 1979. So I was writing print. So I knew if I was writing an ad for a particular print magazine or going into 5 different newspapers, I knew exactly where it was, what size it was, what color. It was fixed. All right. There was you can view that ad across different media. Same with radio, same with TV. So yeah, it was very different. Now, that said, I used to write some direct mail as well. I used to write junk mail, which is kind of fun because it's super technical in a sense, where again, you're definitely designing the appearance of the text as well as writing the text. And see, yeah, there's some commonalities. And again, stop me if I ramble, but an interesting thing I find with direct mail, if I write you a 4-page letter, I know that I'm going to lose the most people at the end of each page, which is why if you still get a piece of junk mail, and I know it's pretty rare these days, and it's well done, they never end a sentence at the bottom of the page. You have to turn the page to finish the sentence. And that is so that people keep reading. And you'll get the same kind of thing happening. I'll have the same, I'm trying to figure this out as well when I'm writing a page on a website, because I know through analytics and through various tools that the more I ask people to scroll, the more people I will lose. So I have to be mindful of the same kind of dynamics. But back to your question, very, very different today. Where people are there's so many more distractions today. There's so many more things for people to look at and listen and view. So back in the day when I was writing a piece of junk mail, I could literally envision someone sitting at their kitchen table and reading the whole thing in a sitting. It could happen. It didn't always happen, but it could happen. Now, that number of words to hold someone's attention when they got email coming in, they got social media things popping up, they got text coming in on their phone. Incredibly hard to hold that kind of attention, which is why we tend now to hold attention by more like drip, 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 like a series of whatever podcasts or a series of articles or posts, so that I can more slowly build a relationship with you, because I can't hold you for half an hour at a time.
Right. And does that, how does that make you feel, I guess, that technology has done that to us? Is it frustrating? Is it fine? Is it just an evolution? How has that technology changed the art of copywriting for you?
I love it. So I wrote my first website back in 1995. And as I did that, I was like completely blown away. It was love at first sight, because back then in 95, the web was very, very new. There were no blogs, no social media, but there were the first kind of forums cropping up. There were discussion lists. And I thought, wow, this is a medium where the audience gets to speak back. And today we take it for granted, right? With social media and blog posts and comment streams under articles and stuff, we take it for granted. Back then, hey, this is never in 1,000 years had a medium been two-way or multi-way like that. It was always one-way broadcast medium. So if I wrote a TV ad, I was just pushing a sales message at you. There's nobody sitting on their sofa at home could actually talk back to me, the creator of that TV ad. It was one way. So we wrote in a broadcast, it was a broadcast world, and we wrote sales copy in a broadcast manner, just pushing the sales message out. The web comes along, and that changes utterly, because now I can actually listen to my audience. Mind-blowing. And again, so many companies don't actually do this, but like before I write anything, and like if I were writing a website, if I were a consultant or a coach or a therapist or whatever, I would spend most of my time actually listening to my audience. And I could do that everywhere and anywhere. I can go to social media, or I can go to discussion lists, I can go to, I can read book reviews on Amazon. I can listen to people. I can listen to the language they use. I can listen to their emotions. I can understand what upsets them, what delights them, what frustrates them. And the fact that I can listen to my audience changes everything, because now when I write back, I can write back to them, addressing their concerns, touching on their emotions, using their language. So my job as a copywriter has changed completely. In a sense, I have to kind of let go my craft or back in the day, I tell you, people joke about it, but it was true. We'd spend, when we were writing print ads, which I was doing for the first few years, half of my mind was thinking about the audience, but at least half my mind was thinking about the award jury. Will I get an award for this ad? Is this ad, is the headline clever? Is it beautifully crafted? Is the design just so? And it was weird, because that was this broadcast world. And now in the world of the web, I have to kind of put aside that it's not about me being clever. It's about me. Like that, if you want to be a good conversational copywriter or a good storyteller, first you have to be a great listener. You can't write online copy well without being a good listener. So you listen to the words, you listen to the language, you listen to the emotions. And so, yeah, the web has changed, to my mind, has changed copywriting completely. So I've always been at heart a conversational copywriter, but with the arrival of the web, it's like, wow, now this is where this belongs. This is what copywriting should be. And it allows me to be persuasive in a way that is more authentic, it's more transparent, it's more engaging, it's more honest. I can sell stuff without being one of those creepy salespeople. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that's essential for the solo professional. If you have a high trust business, you've got to sell without being creepy, without being too salesy or hypey.
And I think it comes back to having conversations and helping others, and that's exactly what you're teaching. Do you think that conversational copywriting and conversational marketing can happen even when it's a button-down industry, like attorneys maybe, or financial? Can that still be conversational?
I think so. In fact, I had this. I talk about conversational copywriting for solo professionals because it's almost like, for me, it's the easiest way to explain it. To me, it's such a no-brainer that if you're a solo professional looking for a high trust relationship, you've got to open that conversationally. And then I got this email back from one of my students who was kind of cheeky. He worked in a bank, an investment bank, and he was the head of a group of salespeople selling high-end, like, banking services to very rich individuals. And my first thought was, you cheeky monkey, I should have charged you 20 grand for that. And you just bought, because what he did is he bought the course and then he made his whole team read through it.
Oh, nice.
And he said, so this is very corporate, very Wall Street, financial services. And he said, it blew our minds. He said, we had no idea how much distance we had been creating between ourselves and our customers and prospects simply by selling too hard and raising our voices too much. And they said, as we were going through the course and you were explaining about engaging by listening, by using less threatening, less salesy, and more conversational language, he said it was just like boom. And he said, we just went out, and he said immediately they just had, he said the immediate return was not financial, he said, but that came fast. He said the immediate thing was the response from the sales team's clients and prospects, who were like saying, oh man, you just sound like, I'm so glad you sound, I'm finding these calls less stressful. You're not stressing me anymore. You're just talking to me. And so, yeah, hey, if you can work for bankers, it can probably work for everyone.
Oh yeah. Well, and I guess what I hear you say, Nick, is that it doesn't have to be ultra casual. It just has to match the conversation of your audience, their level, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And people say, hey, what about business to business? That can't be true. And I'm like, seriously? I said, you tell me a single complex business to business transaction that occurred without a conversation taking place between a salesperson and a prospect. Every B2B sales interaction includes a conversation, usually by phone, sometimes in person. Mm-hmm. It's B2B has always been conversational. And indeed, we talk about case studies in B2B or case studies in marketing. And what's a case study? It's a story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so it's everywhere.
And weren't most of those conversations back in the day on the golf course? So now it's just the website, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, like, honestly, it's kind of, when you first asked me to talk about conversational copywriting in the context of stories, I was kind of scratching my head and saying, well, hang on, how do these things live together? But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, that's not how it works at all. Of course they live together. And like you say, that on the golf course, business being done by the sharing of stories, of conversations, of a share, like say, and then there will be stories about the golf game afterwards.
Of course, it ties us together.
Yeah.
And I think it can probably, I mean, to me, it works whether it's those big bankers, that huge corporate account from a B2B, or from a solo entrepreneur. Those conversations really help us to connect and through story, the small s. So I think it's a great lesson. So we talked a little bit about how you start with folks. So you have your courses, this kind of thing. Do you have like one or two quick tips for storytellers who want to better understand conversational? Like, what would you tell somebody just kind of starting off? Where should they start?
I think it's first of all, like if you are a seller, a professional, a solopreneur, and you are writing your website, maybe it's the homepage, maybe it's a sales page, an about page, whatever. Like print out what you're writing, and then sit across your kitchen table from your husband or your wife or a friend or whatever, and read it out loud. And look be aware of your own feelings. Like, do I feel like an idiot reading this? Like, this doesn't sound like me at all. Look at their face, their response. Like, if they're looking at you like, seriously, this does not sound like you at all. Or you sound like a Ginsu knife salesperson. Or you sound like, oh, I couldn't resist. I found a piece of text, and I share this with you this is from a website for an advertising agency. And these guys should definitely have read this out loud. So here's what they say. Here's the promise from this ad agency. We apply design thinking and stimulate creativity through co-creation initiatives.
I have no idea what that means.
I'll give you a shot. Apply design thinking and stimulate creativity through co-creation initiatives.
Nobody talks like that.
No, they don't. I think what they're trying to say is we have better ideas by working together.
There you go. There you go.
So that's I wrote a post recently about does the copy on your website need translating into everyday language, into everyday English, and most of the time it does. So that's what I say to people is look at what you have right now. Literally, if you can grab a friend or a family member or a neighbor and say, look, I just want to read this out to you. You can't just hand them the paper. You got to read out loud. Look at them in the eye over the kitchen table. Read it out loud. Look at the expression on their face and be aware of how you feel yourself. And this doesn't, sometimes people say to me, oh, Nick, but it's like, you mean I can't sell? And I'm not saying that at all. You can sell your heart out, but it's got to be you. It's got to, like, sometimes I've been selling something to getting all enthusiastic about something, and I'm in front of a friend and they just smile and they say, oh man, it is so cool to hear you. You're just so excited about this. Like, you're so, I don't sound like a salesman. I'm just super pumped about it because it's real. Mm-hmm. And like, if I'm selling you something and I believe in what I'm selling and I believe that you could benefit from it, and I get really pumped and excited about it, then yeah, heck, I'm selling, but I'm not really. I'm just sharing honest excitement and enthusiasm, and that's going to be infectious. And if I want to infect you, I probably want to throw in a story or two as well, because stories can be super infectious. Mm-hmm. But so yeah, do that test. If you sound like some crazy salesperson, if you sound like some weird button-down business person, and you're neither of those things naturally, then it's going to sound weird when you read the stuff out. So you want to rewrite your website to the point where when you read it out loud, it sounds like you. It sounds like the real you. It has got tremendous energy. It shouldn't be. I'm not saying hold back. Don't be. People want to feel the energy and the enthusiasm and the commitment. But they want to feel that it's honest, that they can trust you, that it's real and true.
Mm-hmm. And it brings personality. You can be as whimsical and fun as Ben and Jerry's ice cream, or as kind of snarky and young as Dollar Shave Club. Whatever right. Your personality is, bring it out in that writing.
Right, and you'll see that kind of character. And there's this English company. What are they called? I'm going to forget it. Whenever I say something like that, I immediately forget the name of the company. They sell kind of slushies. What are they called? Anyway, I can't remember. I knew that would happen. But they're right from the beginning. Like, obviously they were a tiny company, and now they're a very large company, very successful. But their everything, their marketing has always been playful, always been cheeky. It's been cheeky and like, you just can't help but love them because they're this cheeky little outfit, scrappy little startup. And they're not even a scrappy startup anymore, but they still have that character. And so, yeah, we get to know and trust that, until maybe one day they break that trust, which companies sometimes do.
Yeah. And for those who do break the trust, if you make it up to me, I'm probably going to be an even more fervent fan than if I never had the trust broken, right? I mean, that right. Makeup is really good. So we talked a little bit about, how to get conversational, how to do this, where to start, the little S, not the big S stories. But when it comes to those stories, and, we've got great copy on our website, we got good stuff going on. how are we supposed to get attention in today's world? Is that something that you kind of coach folks through as well, or how have you done it, Nick, for the conversational copywriter?
I think getting attention as a marketer is, hey, I'd be dishonest if I said anything other than the fact that it's harder today than it was 10 years ago. And it was harder 10 years ago than it was 10 years before that. There is a tremendous amount of noise out there. There's a horrible kind of nonsense to value ratio imbalance. And it's so hard to figure out who should I trust? Who should I listen to? There are so many voices, so many promises being made. And also there are people, it's not like it's not like I'm the only person who ever figured out that conversational copywriting is powerful. And you're not the only person that ever figured out that storytelling is powerful. So there are a bunch of people out there who kind of abuse both. I'll give you an example. Like sometimes I'll sign up for something because either I'm interested in the product or service, or I'm interested in the company. I want to see how they're going to market to me. And what always disappoints me is where I sign up for something, and then I get an email that is something like, "Hey, Nick!" ! My wife and I were walking back from the beach this morning, and I suddenly thought of you. And then I immediately think, no, you didn't. You're a liar. I know that email has been in your sales funnel for the last 6 months, and it goes out to everyone, 6 hours after they download your free PDF file. Don't tell me that. It's a lie. And what they're doing is they're telling a story. They're trying to engage me. They're trying to disarm me by saying, hey, I'm a regular guy. I was walking back from the beach with my wife, and hey, I just suddenly thought about you. Yes, it's the power of conversational casual language. Yes, it's the power of a small S story, but it's a lie. And maybe he gets away with it for a while. In the long term, almost certainly not. So it's in terms of getting the word out there these days, yeah, I think it's a lot more challenging. Even if you're paying in social media, or you're paying, even when you pay, it's noisy. Everywhere is noisy. I think the best thing you can do is, I think the starting point is giving a damn about your customers.
I love that.
If you love your customer and you create something that you think will be of true value, if you communicate that and promise that without over-promising, if you stop trying to sell to the whole world, because you can't, you need to find a group of people who are going to value what it is you offer, and just speak to that group. So now you're not trying to fight the noise of everyone. You're just trying to get in front of that group and just be, care about what you do for those people, and be authentic, and don't stop. If I've got, like I said, I take a small pride in still being standing after 40 years in one career. And if I have a secret to my success, such as it is, it's not that I've ever been the best, but man, I'm just very persistent. I'm relentless. Like if I want to do something, if I want to achieve something, I'm pretty obsessive about it. And I think in today's market, you need to. So you've got to, like I say, I think you need to love your customer, but you've also got to love your message. You got to love what it is you're trying to achieve, because it's going to be a hard grind. And the difficulty is the stories we tend to hear online is, hey, I sell X. Let me introduce you to Jack. He took my course, he followed my advice, and now he's making 50 grand a year. All right, so Jack is always the case study, but Jack is 0.1% of the total. So we get this weird distorted image with all these promises out there. So yeah, I think you have to be super transparent, super honest. I think you have to love the people you're trying to serve. You have to love the promise you're making. And there's kind of a bond there where I was talking to someone who wants to do some kind of co-marketing with me on conversational copywriting, and his ideas are too aggressive for me. I said, no, this isn't kind of my promise to the people I sell to and the people I work with. And he said, well, you're leaving a whole bunch of money on the table. And I said, of course I know that. I know that. Of course I am. I know that. And that's the trade-off, because I'm in this for the long haul. I want to build this relationship with this audience. I want them to know they can trust me, and I'm not going to push them too hard. And if I leave some money on the table along the way, that's okay, because I'm in this for the long haul. I'm rambling now, I can tell. But.
I like the idea of being in it for the long haul and leaving money on the table, because I think too many people, especially from what I've seen, especially right now, digital marketers are that push, or solopreneurs that everybody has a course, everybody has a I'm going to make you rich thing. And it's like, no, I just want to do good work.
Oh, that's exactly right. And what I dislike is the sense that, and I fall prey to this myself. So I'll look at colleagues and stuff who, I don't know what, they got bigger houses or fancier cars or whatever. And all of a sudden I feel bad because I'm not as good as some of those other people I'm seeing out there, like good in terms of, riches, as it were. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of marketing is aimed to do that to us, to make us feel that we could do better, like, others are doing better than we are. So It's quite a minefield out there.
Make us feel bad about ourselves, right?
Waxing awesome. We're getting all philosophical here now.
That's the best part of the conversation right there. I love that kind of stuff. So kind of in that same vein, I mean, you're somebody who may have colleagues who have bigger houses or fancier cars, but you've had quite a career. You've kind of made it to this point where you're able to offer these courses and stuff. Do you ever kind of feel like you've kind of landed in this really good spot? How does it feel to be at this point in your career as a storyteller, as a copywriter?
God, I don't know. It sounds like a cliche, but I actually filled with gratitude. Mm-hmm. I'm extremely mindful of the fact that there are other people out there working just as hard as I work, doing miserable jobs for miserable pay. And I'm very aware of how fortunate I am in loving what I do and being able to make a decent living. I mean, I don't have a huge fancy house. I don't have a huge fancy car, but I make a comfortable living. And I'm hugely grateful for that. And that this career path has given me, not just me, like, I've raised 5 kids. I got 7 grandchildren. This career has been wonderful for me and my family. So I'm super grateful for that.
That's got to be a lot of stories there then, with 7 grandkids and 5 kids.
Okay, can I say one thing?
Yeah,
There's something I wanted to say. You talked about the small S stories, and it's just something I just wanted, and I'm sure you teach this all the time, but that even when it's a small S story in marketing, I say to people, look, something has to happen. A marketing story can't just be, I don't know, I drove to the gym and I loved it and I came back. It's like, that's a story of what you did this morning, but it's not a story. It's not doing anything. Something has to. Whereas if I said I was driving to the gym this morning and it's like just a 5-minute drive, and I suddenly thought, if I left the car at home and I walked to the gym and back, I'd get the same amount of exercise and I wouldn't have to pay for the gym. All right. So it's the same thing happened, but something changed in my mind. Like, it was like a transformation, like, if I, now it's a story. Because it's not just a description of something that happened. It's a description of a change in state in some way. And I think something has to change, something has to evolve, something unexpected has to happen. Something has to happen, even in a small S story, for it to really engage with people. I think that's what people have, this kind of innate, that they're not aware of it, but they have this kind of innate story radar. If nothing happens in a story, people are like, what? Like, what Why do you say that? It's like we're waiting for something. So when I said talk about small less stories, I don't mean that you can just be a straight description of this is what happened. I mean, something interesting has to happen along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of the so what test, right? You say something and you go, okay, now so what?
Yeah. And you probably had it. Like you go to a bar with people from work and somebody gives a story and like everyone kind of tells a story and then everyone stops like kind of embarrassed because it's just like a really bad story because like nothing happened.
Right.
And it's like awkward for everyone.
And the same can hold true through business. So obviously you teach this. We're going to have a link to in the show notes to your website and everything. You've got courses. Tell me just a little bit about how a course works. If I'm really, if I'm listening to this and I'm really loving the conversation, I'm thinking, man, I want to learn how to do this. Is it pretty easy to get involved with you, Nick?
Sure. I have a course on this. It's kind of video-based with video-based slide presentations, different sections, different lectures. There are 18 different lectures in total. And it kind of goes through of like the principles of conversational copywriting and then how to apply the conversational approach across different media like email and social media and web pages, things like that. So it's real hands-on. There's homework assignments. I presented in different tiers, and there's different prices, but there's also different levels of engagement. You step up at one tier and you get this kind of group coaching. There's a community there, which is great, which is fantastic. I love that part of it. And then the top tier, there's actually some one-on-one coaching and engagement with me personally. You can just choose the level that best suits. But definitely, it's a complete course and there's bonus materials and I'm adding, in fact, I add something every week now. I'm adding a new video to the course. So you buy it once, yours forever, and it just keeps growing and growing. Because I never stop thinking about it.
It's a healthy obsession, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, it's been an incredible pleasure, Nick. I want to wrap it up with one last question for you. If someone were to say to you, okay, Nick, you're done telling stories, what would that last story look like that you'd want to go out on?
Is it like a deathbed story?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I guess it depends on what I wanted, what it was about. Like if I want to bring comfort to people or if I want to, all right, I'll give you a story. So this is a lesson. So one of my weaknesses in life is I keep giving people advice when they don't ask for it. And it annoys some people. But so on my deathbed, I'd give one final piece of advice through story, whether people wanted to hear it or not. So here's the story. It's a true story. You love that one. True story. So when I was in my teens, I guess I was about 17 at school in England, there was this kind of exchange or transfer thing. And me and some buddies from the school ended up as guests of the Norwegian army at some Norwegian army base buried deep in the forest somewhere in Norway. I have very hazy recollections, but it was kind of weird. Anyway, part of what we were doing, in fact, this is like in the mid 70s, all right? So there were, there's no phones or GPS. We just had a pencil and paper and compass and a map, and we did this orienteering. And we had to get from the camp to some point where they picked us up in a truck by the end of the day, going through the Norwegian forest and rivers and all that stuff. And we were sent off in groups of 2, spaced out. And so this Norwegian army guy, he's giving us the maps, and he says one piece of advice before you go. He said, when you're reading the maps, which you're going to have to do if you want to find the truck at the end of the day, when you're reading the map, because this is out in the wilderness, if there ever comes a point where the map and the land disagree, always remember the land is right. And he said that, and it was like this, like it just fired off all these circuits in my brain. It was like boom. And like honestly, from that point on, like in life, and often it's where people have said, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's the map. And I love a map. I love maps to help me get to where I want to be. But where I see that the information on the map does not correspond to the reality I see in front of my face. I still, like, it was one moment, he probably took like 30 seconds to say that to us. And I've remembered it like ever since. It's like, where the land and the map disagree, always remember the land is right.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, man, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Where is the best place for listeners to find you, man?
Conversationalcopywriting.com. I got a blog there. I've actually put together a page for you, conversationalcopywriting.com/stories. If you go there, there's like a free download, there's some free videos. So yeah, I do what those other guys do. I'm going to try to get your first name and email address. And if you do that, if you get into my funnel, hopefully you'll see the difference, that I'm not one of those pushy, hypey people, and that I'm more I'm enthusiastic. Yes, I really want you to learn this stuff. But hopefully you'll see a slightly different tone, and hopefully the voice you hear on the website and the voice you hear when you read my emails is the same voice you're hearing now. Because if it's not, I'm doing something wrong. This is what it's meant to sound like. It's meant to be me.
And I tell you, anybody listening, stamp of approval. Go do it. Get involved in the next funnel, man. Well, one of these days we'll have to meet up at a pub for a beer to hear the rest of the Norwegian story, how you got there, because that sounds amazing. So,
I got tons of stories. Give me a few beers, I'm story central.
Cheers, man. I'm in. All right, man. Thanks for your time today, Nick.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
So once again, thank you so much to the conversational copywriter, Nick Usborne. You can connect with him at the links he mentioned and others all in the show notes. There's his social media and all that good stuff. And if you enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing it with someone. Post it to social media, text it to somebody who needs to know about conversational copywriting and storytelling. Tell somebody on the street, wherever you can share it. Very much appreciated. And if you want to share your story with me, go to thestorytellersnetwork.com and hit Contact Dan on the contact page. Send me an email and let's connect. All right. Until next time, here's to telling our stories and having those stories to tell. Cheers.